everyone, and welcome back to our channel today. It is a beautiful day, so I decided it was time to do the video. So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you about some of the jobs. Actually, I'm going to tell you about all the jobs that I've had in my life. Now, I did an earlier video where I had mentioned, I think, like 10 jobs that I had, and people were really interested in learning about jobs because when you don't work in a place, you're kind of interested in how something's made or how they do it. So that's what I thought I would do. I thought it might be interesting for you to learn about all the jobs that I've had. And let me tell you, I've had a bunch. I've been working off and on since I was 16 years old. And in the earlier part of my life, I was prone to quit a job just as fast as I went to work there. But as I got older, I realized I was leaving a bad track record when I didn't have a good job record behind me. So I stopped doing that. That's why the last job that I had, even though it was a hard job and physically demanding on me, I toughed it out for 20 years until I got to retirement age. So I'm going to put Jade down here because she's uncomfortable sitting up like this. Let her rest if she wants to. And I'm going to tell you about the jobs. I'm going to try to tell you about all of them. I'm sure I'm going to forget some of them that I had. And I may go over some of the other ones that I already told you about. But a lot of these are going to be new jobs that you've never heard me talk about before. So Jade, if you want to lay down, we're ready to start. Okay, the first one, I have a list here in front of me. The first one that I want to tell you about, I was what's called an expo merchant. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with that, when you go to these garden expos or ag expos or whatever, where there's exhibits and they give away free samples of stuff and you sign up for things, that's what it was. The company that I worked for was a pest control company. And it was my job to greet the customers as they walked up, tell them a little bit about the company. And we had a box there where they could drop their name in for a $25 gift card to JCPenney's. And on the paper that they filled out, it would ask them questions like, do you have troubles with bugs in your home? Would you be interested in having somebody come and spray? Have you ever had your home professionally sprayed before? And they could answer those or they could not answer them. But the main thing was to get them to put their name and their telephone number in there. Because I found out that the guy that I was working for was pretty shady, really. And he told me, what do you want, Jay? She's trying to get back up here. He told me at the end of the day when it was over with, he didn't draw a name out. Nobody won the $25 gift card to JCPenney's. And I thought that was wrong for him to do that. He said he was just interested in getting names and telephone numbers so that he could contact people to try to get customers. And that he was able to get customers by doing that, by calling the people on the phone. And he'd call them up and tell them, you know, congratulations for entering the contest. I'm sorry that you didn't win, but I would like to talk to you about my company. And he would take it from there. So that was one job I had. And this next one, I think this is a new one. I don't think I ever told you about this. I lived in another town, and my cousin and I had started a house cleaning business. And I moved to another town, and I started a house cleaning business in that town. Most of the people that I cleaned for were school teachers, doctors and nurses, and truck drivers. And I didn't do it very long because to me, it was a boring job because I don't even like cleaning my own house. Even though I was getting paid to clean other people's houses, it just wasn't something that I was interested in pursuing. I have on my list that I want to tell you about is one that I've told you about before. And I was a waitress at a little cafe in another town. Once again, I didn't work there very long because I hated it. I wasn't very good at it, and I hated it. And another job that I had, I was actually a dishwasher in a restaurant. I didn't just wash the dishes when they come back. My job was also to prep some things like baked potatoes. I washed them and wrapped them in aluminum foil so they could be baked. I shredded carrots. I chopped up the lettuce for the salad, stuff like that when there wasn't dirty dishes. Then when the dishes were brought back, I rinsed them and cleaned them and stacked them in this machine that washed them. They weren't hand washed. They were put through a big steam machine, but that was part of my job there too. And the next job that I want to tell you about was a Tupperware dealer. Now, a lot of you have probably already been through this. When I think a lot of people, when they're young, they become Tupperware dealers. And once again, I didn't do it very long. It was hard because you had to have these parties in people's houses and try to get people to order Tupperware and then try to get people to sign up to have a party in their home. And people just didn't want to do it because Tupperware is expensive even back then. It's still expensive today, but it was expensive back then too. And people just were not interested in signing up to have a party. People would come to the parties because they liked to get the little free, the little free gifts that we gave out. Tupperware party gifts, prizes, whatever you want to call them. People would come for those, but they would eat the snacks and the stuff, play the games, and they very rarely ordered the Tupperware. And the next job that I want to tell you about was babysitting. Both at home for my brothers and sisters. I did babysit them a few times when my parents went out. But I also babysitted when my husband and I lived in New Mexico. There was a lady that had a daughter, and then there was another couple that had a daughter, and I babysitted for both of them during the day where their parents worked. And this next job, I've told you about this before. It was when I worked in the hatchery, and my job was to vaccinate the little baby chicks. Now, they don't do it now, or if they do, they've got a machine that does it. But back then, they were done by hand. You actually picked the little chick up, and you had a hypodermic needle that you would stick into its neck, and you would inject this medicine in there, medicine to keep it from getting some kind of chicken disease. And I did that for a little while. And then another job that I worked in a hat factory. And my job in the hat factory was to sew, like on a cowboy hat, where it has that rim that goes around the outside that's got the wire so you can bend it down or bend it up and shape it. That was my job, was to take that little piece of fabric, put it in the machine, stick the wire in there, and sew all the way around the outside of the hat. And then cut the wire and then finish off the sewing. Then I worked in a factory that made polyfoam products. I actually worked in two, and I'm trying to think. The polyfoam factory, I think, was the one that made the cups and the coolers like you get that's got the straws in them, and it's got a foam plastic shield over a plastic insert. And then there's another little foamy thing like to put sodas and beers in. That's the one that I worked in. Then I also worked in the same company that had the hatchery. I worked in the processing plant. And that was where after the chickens got big enough, they brought them there to kill them, dress them, gut them, pull the feathers off, package them. And I worked in what was called the eviscerating room. And my first job was what they call the transfer table, where you actually hang them up after they come through. And it scared me because I was always afraid I'd get my thumbs in there because it was moving so fast. So I couldn't do it fast enough to keep up with the chickens coming. So they moved me to the eviscerating room, where my job was to break the fat off the gizzards. And I had to actually stick my hands up inside the chickens and turn them like this and pull out the gizzards and drop them in a trough. They went to another room. The next job that I want to tell you about, I worked in a paper factory that did binding for books and tablets. They would take somebody would cut a bunch of papers up into whatever size, little tablets like this or writing tablets. They would stack a piece of cardboard, put the papers in, stack a piece of cardboard, put the papers in, like that. And then they would send it to me. And my job was to take like a paint roller, dip it in glue, roll up and down the outside edges of the papers to glue them together. Then they would push that trough off and let it dry. And then they would send it to another person that would take a knife and would cut underneath the cardboard to cut it apart. And that was how they made tablets. I also worked in a factory that made automotive car exhaust pipes, mufflers, tailpipes, chrome pipes, and stuff like that. And I think I told about this in my other video. My job was working on a bending machine where you would take a pipe, put it in, step on a pedal, and it would bend the curve to fit around up underneath the wheels and underneath the parts of whatever particular model of car that it went on. I also worked in the donut house, which I've told you guys about this. I worked in actually 2 different donut places in my life. This particular one that I'm thinking I have here, I was actually the delivery girl. I come in at midnight and help box up the donuts, and then I took them all to another town and delivered them to hotels, restaurants, convenience stores, hospitals, places like that, and collected some of the money, not all of it. Then I also worked in a grocery deli department. My job there when I first started was a meat slicer. And so I worked out front behind the counter, slicing the meat and the cheese for the customers. And then eventually I was moved to the back where I made the donuts. And I also made party trays and fixed up little dessert cups and things like that. Then I also worked in a landscaping factory. Actually, it was an insect-resistant landscaping factory that made tarps and garden tarps and weed barriers and stuff that you would lay over the grass in your garden to keep the weeds from coming up. And they also had covers that went over chicken houses and tarps that went over bales of hay that you would wrap the hays in the field. You know how you see them big round bales of hay? These tarps would go over that to wrap it up, to cover it from the elements until the trucks could come to pick it up. So I worked there. Then I worked in a shoe factory. I actually think I worked in a shoe factory more than once. But this one that I can remember about, my job was to sew the front of the shoe that your toes go in, that little designy part that went around it. There was like 2 pieces. My job was to sew that on. Then I worked in a plastics factory. We made plastic components that went inside of cars. I forget exactly where they went. I'm thinking they had something to do with the ashtrays and the door locks, but I'm not sure. It's been a while. But I think that's what it was. We actually molded the plastic and snapped it together and then shipped it out, and they assembled the ashtrays and the door locks in another place. Then another place that I worked at was a Mexican restaurant. And another job that I had, I was a hostess in a Chinese restaurant. When the people come in, I would ask how many in your party, and then I would find a table for that many, and I would take them and seat them. And I think I even took them the menus and water. And then I worked in a bakery, which I've told you about this before. My job was actually making the donuts. I fried the donuts, I made the donuts, I frosted the donuts, I filled the jelly in the donuts, and I also run the cash register. Then I worked in a newspaper office, and I run what's called a merchant's route, where I went around from town to town, and I filled up the paper boxes that Jade's trying to get back up here again. I filled up the paper boxes that they have sitting around your town where you put your quarters in and get your newspapers. That was my job. And then I also took the money out of them, out of all the boxes that I went to, and took it back to the newspaper office. Worked in a newspaper office in the darkroom. I actually developed the film that they used to print the photos that were put in the newspaper for that particular day. The reporters would go out and get their stories, snap their pictures, then they would bring their film back to me with the darkroom, and they would write a little note and clip it to it telling me print picture number 10 or print picture number 4 or whatever. And then I would take that picture and I would enlarge it to whatever size they told me to fit in the newspaper. And then I worked in another shoe factory. As I told you, I've worked in a shoe factory several times. This particular shoe factory, I actually assembled the whole top part of the shoe. The heel, the tongue, and the front. I did all of that. And I worked at the Dollar Tree as a cashier. Now, when you work at the Dollar Tree as a cashier, you're not just a cashier standing up there waiting on customers. You actually, in between customers, you have to open up boxes and put merchandise out on the shelf, which was fine with me because when I opened up the boxes, I got to see the merchandise before the customers. And if there was something in there I wanted, I was allowed to take it and stick it underneath the cash register. And then before I went home that evening, I could buy it. So that was a good deal. Next job that I want to tell you about was an Avon dealer. And I think I was an Avon dealer for quite a few years. When I first started with Avon, they weren't as expensive as they are now. And basically all they had was makeup and creams and lotions to do your face and body with. Now, of course, they have jewelry, they have clothing, they have things for your home, you know, like dishes and salt and pepper shakers, shoes. I'm trying to think of some of the different stuff they've expanded. Vitamins. They didn't have any of that stuff when I was an Avon dealer. And when I was an Avon dealer, you actually took your little kit, your little Avon kit, and went door to door and let the people look at the samples and look through the book and order it and leave samples with them and stuff. And then you were required to take the order back to them to deliver it to collect the money. And this next job that I want to tell you about, I don't even know if this company is still around or not. It probably is. But I was a Amway distributor, dealer, whatever you want to call it. Me and my husband were in it together. And he was the one that would go to the people's houses and set up the whiteboard. They gave you a whiteboard and show people how you were recruited and how you recruited people under you. And the more people you got under you, the more money you made, because as they sold stuff, you got a percentage of what they sold. And we weren't in it very long, and it wasn't too long after that him and I divorced. So, but Amway is good. I have to admit, all the products that I bought from Amway, they were good products, and I liked them. I don't even know, like I said, if they're still around, but I did enjoy it while I was in the Amway. And the next job that I want to tell you about, it was in a plating company. We made ashtrays and parts for cars that were chrome plated, nickel plated, and black zinc plated. All those colors. Like if you've got a car and you pull your ashtray out and it's black, that's black zinc. We did that. And then if you've got an ashtray that you pull out and it's chrome, we did that. We did bumpers, any doorknobs, handles, anything on a car that was chrome, nickel plated, or anything like that. That was what we did. And my job was to take the parts out of a box, hang them on the racks, take the racks and hang them on a conveyor belt that went down, and dipped them into a tank that had the kind of plating on it, and then it would bring it back around, and when it was dry, I had to unpack it and put it back in the box. And this next job that I want to tell you about, I didn't last there very long at all because I got fired. I don't think it was for anything I did really specifically, but it kind of was in a way. It was a filter company that made water purifying filtration systems. I think they went into these big plants where they had to run filter, because these things were huge. They weren't little like you would put in your sink. They were great big, like 4 feet by 5 feet. And you had to take glue and put on a surface, and then stack this plastic on and put some glue, stack it. Then you would put it in another area that would press it down and hold it until it stuck and dried. Then you would take it off, and then you had to carry it from there and stack it on a pallet. And the reason they let me go, as they said, was because I was too slow and I was letting the other workers help me do my work. And that wasn't my fault, because there was a guy in there that kept coming over and grabbing my parts and carrying them over to the pallet where they were loading them. And I kept telling him, stop doing my work for me. You're going to get me in trouble. And he just insisted on helping me. I don't know if he had a crush on me or what the deal was, but he wouldn't stop helping me. And they saw that, and they thought that I was allowing him to help me. Okay, this next job that I want to tell you about is for a company called Blair Products. And I don't know if they're still in the market or not, but you had to take a little catalog around and leave it at people's houses. They would order stuff, and then after they ordered the stuff, you would go back and pick up the order and send it off, and then when the stuff come in, you had to deliver it back to the people and leave them a new catalog. I didn't do it very long. So that's it. That's pretty much all. If there's any more, I can't remember any of them. Like I said, I've worked off and on since I was 16. I've had a lot of different jobs, and some of them I really enjoyed. Others I definitely hated. And some of them I just did because I needed a paycheck, to be honest. So thank you guys for coming and visiting with us today. And Jade's back up here again. Of course, she don't want to sit up. Jade's back up here with me. So y'all come back and see us any old time. Bye for this one.